Council, we are back after lunch, and Director McLean, if you could continue from where you were, I guess.
I'll do my best. Let me get the document back up on the screen. Erin may join us in a little bit more frequently.
Erin is not here, or she is?
I'm here.
She's
Yeah,
still
you're
here.
She's here. Hi, Erin.
She's
Hey.
biding her time. So while you were on the lunch break, I went through the next 10 slides and approved them, so we're all done those.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So we left off with the carry forwards, which was both I appreciate the frustrations, but it was a good conversation because it helps show that council doesn't simply rubber stamp something because we didn't get it done. So I think
Good.
there's,
That is really good messaging.
so I throw that out as I think the process was difficult, but it was a necessary and a good process. Now we're going to move on to items, and I want to make sure I haven't skipped one. No. The next group is what I referenced earlier today was anchor projects, and don't get hung up on that's just a phrase I put on a slide. It's larger projects that are in the capital plan that are now getting ever closer that may or may not have reasons to move into the future further or what the constraints are. We just want to make sure that they're kind of rock projects and they need to stay where they are.
Mhm.
And I think that can lead to good conversation. So I'm going to make this the full slide view. The first one, the building that we are currently sitting in, the Town Hall Library project. It's not year one, but it's near enough now that the location was selected as where we are. So this is just to reaffirm that. The cost estimate, until we have concept designs, is we have each year buffered it a little further. I added another $1 million to it, just not necessarily scientific, but just to add a buffer. We're up to around $10 million overall for that project. That's one of the ones when we talked about earlier today around funding. I don't have a grant attached to it because till we have a concept, hard to apply for the grant. We do have funding assumptions related to it. So the dollars for that have a funding assumption from the Friends of the Library.
Okay.
And that was based on inputs from them, I'll say 4 years ago. And it is just an estimate, but it's $1 million. So if they can fundraise that much, we're good.
Fundraising.
If they can fundraise more than that, we're better. Less back to the taxpayer. And there is a $500,000 through discussions haven't started yet, but would the County of Kings be contributing something because it is a library located in the town of Wolfville, but it is most certainly a regional library. So there's $1.5 million that's in there as funding assumptions. They're soft funding assumptions right now, but important to know. And I put in terms of our connection to previous plans, this replacement of a building will help address climate change goals. It's in the MPS in that section, page 33. I don't have to go into details, but this is not the most energy efficient building. I can hear people go in and out of Tim Hortons from my office, so I'm pretty sure the window's not well insulated. So it helps with that. And then in terms of accessibility, I didn't put a page number because it will help from an accessibility standpoint as an employer, because you'll be able to accommodate better. If you have somebody apply for a job that needs accommodation, you will have a better facility for the members of the public that may need accommodation. And the library element of it is clearly a public service, that the accessibility improvements was one of the identified weaknesses down at the other location. So I'll stop there, other than saying it's $10 million, the funding assumptions. Any discussion that council wants to have on that, concerns or questions?
I'm not seeing any lights pop on.
Well, no.
Okay, I do see a light pop on. Councilor
Well,
Ingham.
I mean, $10 million, I think initially when we talked about it, it was like in the $8 million range, right? So we can expect this to go up, I'm sure. And then what would be the method of going to the County of Kings to ask for money there? And how does that work?
I think it would have to be discussions opened up probably between the CAOs, perhaps the mayors, and backed up by data of who uses the library. Looking to the mayor a little bit because you do these studies for others, but it would be based on the data of users who lives in town, who lives out. And what
And our
helps?
library, and they've actually, as
They've done
part of
that
their
data.
presentation, we've seen them that such a percent, 40% or 60% are from the county or whatever.
So would you think it would be based on a percentage model, like if?
I
you
think
know,
for the library that that's
or that would be a
standard.
model.
I think any funding from the county would come for the library, not obviously for the town hall.
Yeah. And that is not a twist, but an added difficulty to it because as a common building, we have to ensure that they see the costs.
Yeah, sure. And there's
To them.
precedent. I don't know that they did it by percent, but certainly the county contributed to the renovation in Kentville, and that's pretty standard.
Yeah. And the only caution I'll throw out on that, I always like to throw the caution to anything optimistic, is the county has their own financial pressures, so they have to go through their process and we have to respect that where they put costs, that is a matter of their council. The Kentville process was an interesting one, and I just would ask people to go back to it. I think it impacted location preference, and it wasn't if I understand it right, and I'll qualify. It was not an upfront capital contribution. It's related to a building that is privately owned and leased, and there's a contribution. So
That's why I say
It's a different
It's a
model.
little bit of an odd one, but the point is, any funding would come to the library. There's lots of precedent for that kind of sharing right across the province and even in.
and
Kings
we
County.
have dollars in this year's budget to start a process to try and reach out to get design concepts. And that's one of those ones, Devin, as you can appreciate, by Tuesday night has been busy, but we'd like to get something out somewhere in the winter, and that might, if we can do that, inform this a little bit more. But for now, it's moved forward a year. It's only in year 3 now. So that's a
Devin, do you have your hand up or are you just stretching?
Just wanted to add that here.
Yeah.
You can hear me
That's
now.
better.
We do have a Wolfville Blooms
Page completed.
with all of the background information, with the video that was made. I don't know if
Some of you remember the video that was made with AVRL. There's a bunch of what I would call exciting information about moving forward on this project. We wanted to get through today just before we launch that. And then we're moving into scheduling some meetings around the RFP to get that designed and brought back to council in the new year. But it is important, just where we do have some limited time working on different projects that that's what was in the operations plan. So I think putting this out publicly and promoting that on Wolfville Blooms, from my perspective, is very positive. But I just want everyone to know that, because we wanted to put it out yesterday, but we waited, so we may do it tomorrow or early next week.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer?
I guess I would say that, first of all, I'm not in love with having the town hall here where it is, but you guys have kind of made a decision and maybe we're gonna drive forward from that. But whatever your budget is, the corner of Gasbro and Maine is gonna have to be considered into that. Pick a number, 3, 4, 5, 10, I don't know, just for the reconfiguration of that street, and should be part of the redesign, whatever we're gonna do here, and that's big part of
We have a slide on the intersection, so I know they're connected, but perhaps
to.
for now, the dollars that we talk here are relative to the building, the parking around it and the amenities, but not the intersection, I would say, at this stage.
Yeah, but as consideration, so that's gonna add to that
Yep.
lump sum.
Yeah,
Let's
and that's
say.
been brought up, I think, in past meetings that will be.
And the other thing, when go out for design, I wonder, should we be including a commercial space in our design? Like, should the town hall be on the ground level, or should we have something commercial on the ground level?
When we're saying design, I think we're talking concepts at this stage. It's not like a blueprinted level, and I'm looking at Devin a little bit.
I think what we're anticipating is probably some upfront consultation and parameters around what the design is and then moving into a physical design. There's been lots of work done on this, as needs assessment, and there's lots of
Broad numbers,
but until we start assigning floor areas on a site, it's very difficult for us to move to the next piece of work. There's also, to your point about commercial space, I don't think we got there on who
or what. Probably every organization in town would want to be a partner in this project.
like it. I really do think that. And so vetting that and putting that out in some format, again, that to me just underscores why we need to get on with engaging someone, having a really clear scope of work, and then running that through council. Honestly, probably for 2 years. Yeah.
Councillor McKay?
Is the intersection in the same year as the town hall? I was just trying to see the street and I don't.
I can help with that.
Okay, yeah, that's next slide.
You won't see it in the CIP right now if you're
Okay.
looking for
That's
it.
what I was wondering.
Okay, and my second one is, I'm on the same, I don't love this location, I really never did. And as we have more conversations with the Wolfville Children's Center, healthcare, I mean, we've had multitudes of discussions since this first came up, and we've had zero, public input on this location or any other for that matter. I know we picked one so we could have something to go forward with. I wonder if the water on those beats have changed again, but I'm curious about it. And from some of the business perspective, it was if it brought a whole bunch more people downtown to this location, what would the congestion look like? And would that actually be a deterrent to their business? Because we hear it all the time, lineups are too long, we're just not going to Wolfville. And would that be good for them? And obviously they feel it isn't, but, and I've only heard that from a couple, but that doesn't mean that others aren't thinking it, so. Not that the dollar value should change or that it should, not be there, I think it clearly needs to be there in the planning somewhere. I'm still just not 100% sold on this location, especially when we haven't asked anyone yet.
Deputy Mayor?
I take it when you mean congestion, you mean traffic congestion. So, I know we've done a lot of work on location for this site. We had 2 because we agreed, I think, that it would have to be on town-owned land. So we didn't have that expense, and it was really between this and the current library. And anyway, I those were the 2 options. On balance, I respectfully disagree with Councillor McKay because I do think of the 2 and all the things we consider, this was still the ideal. But I guess I just wanted to clarify the timing of that intersection and the start of this and the order that we're doing that in and how the 2 fit together, because I think.
Okay, we may have to jump to that slide, but I'll reference it this way. And well, let me go to the slide because I have a couple page references, so just bear with me. I hope I have the slide there. Active transportation to the CIP workshop. Intersection, sorry, I went right by it. Currently, the CIP has the intersection referenced as, and this was part of the discussion. I think it was the afternoon committee, the whole meeting when Alex was presenting over at the fire hall. What is currently.
When I left that day,
You
when
had,
Aaron and I
think
left.
you and Aaron had to leave a little bit early. Yeah.
7th.
So the ops plan, page 56 and 57, references that there'd be $100,000 spent on updated data analysis of the intersection. That's to occur in 24-25. That's the marching orders that came out of the ops plan. So the $100,000 shows in the CIP. So you don't see a large, whatever the dollar amount might be for lights or whatever. So currently, in next fiscal year, Alex has $100,000 as it stands now to do a study on that intersection. And I think what was referenced, and we may have to get Alex to jump in here a bit, was the previous studies didn't consider pedestrians as much. And then just in terms of traffic flows under current conditions, but nothing is in the budget right now for lights, a roundabout. It is, I think the study would determine what it is. Because at this stage, some people say lights, some people say roundabout. So I'm gonna flip it to Alex to provide better engineering talk than I just gave, if that's okay.
Maybe
Thanks, Mike.
just continue, maybe there are questions about it, because I'm thinking if we could, I have a question that you should probably answer, Alex, but I rather ask my question first before we went back and forth.
Okay.
If I could. I just want to build on Councillor Palmer's comment. And I don't know when you said 3, 4, I don't know if that had $1 million after it, but for argument's sake, let's say it does. I understand that you don't have that figure now because you're going to do the study, which is in the budget. But let's say it's $2 million. If we're gonna build this in here in 4 years, that 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it is for the street should be in the budget at the same time. And if it's not, I fear, we will make decisions on other things in the budget because we're missing a big expense that has to be there. So that's, how do we handle that is my question. So now go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, and that's actually a good segue from what Mike was saying earlier. Just trying to weigh in on where we're at in the whole process and that comment about how the two projects intertwine with one another. So the study that we're gonna do at that intersection will result in options for us. And, you know, the 3 big options that I can think of to come out of that study would be a traffic light, a roundabout, or do nothing. So those are 3 potential options. They all have significantly different implications to the capital investment plan. That's why there's no money in it now for whatever option we're going to pick, because we don't know what option is going to be the recommendation.
I absolutely understand that, but unless we're pretty confident that it's going to be the do nothing, and I certainly don't believe that, then should we not have a placeholder so that when we're making decisions on the whole capital budget, we understand that there's likely a big chunk of money that is in year 4. And so we don't put another big chunk in. I mean, just let's say it's 3 million and we don't put that figure in, and Kentville and Kings and Wolfville decide to do the rec center in year 6. We might say, oh, we've got $2 million capacity. Let's start putting money into the budget for the future rec center. When really we know that that's just an example. We don't have that capacity because it's probably not going to be do nothing at the intersection. I can't imagine that. So should we not make some kind of guesstimate just so we know what we're dealing with in the 10-year plan?
I mean, I suppose that is an option. We could ballpark sort of a worst case scenario.
Yeah, I
and-
think,
and put that in CIP.
and that coming out today is part of what helps with the direction that we get. What I would say is that estimate, when we say $3 million, I think we want be careful when we throw numbers out, because all due respect, I want Alex to, just like the conversation we had earlier on some items, is $3 million. I would not, it's on the high end or related to a roundabout versus a set of lights, which, and this is just a number, might be more like $500,000.
Mhm.
So which placeholder do we do?
Understand,
Yeah.
but unless we really, I'm sure if I did a straw vote, nobody thinks doing nothing when there's a Devour and a big building and a library here, it's probably not going to happen. Shouldn't we be saying, even if you add the money to the cost of this building, we just need to understand that, or I do fear we will make other decisions without having the full picture in our mind. If not this council, then the next council, because they won't know about all this discussion.
And I think that's fair. We can work on that and pick whatever the logic of the dollar, like we've done
Yeah.
before. And then that drives the funding more.
It is, yeah, and just to kind of expand on what I was saying earlier, the dollar amount is not the only critical piece of information, it's the when.
Absolutely.
And if we get through this study next year and our council makes a decision on which direction we want to go as a town with that intersection, then that decision then builds into the design process for town hall. If, for example, let's say it is a roundabout, that doesn't have to necessarily happen at the same time as town hall. That can happen 10 years after the town hall is built, as long as that project, the town hall project, is done with that in consideration. So we know there's gonna be whatever, a curved sidewalk here at some point in the future. We don't put a building there. So those, I mean, having that information and having those decisions upfront and early in the design process will enable us to do all those projects when we need to do them or when we have the capacity to do them.
I understand, and then I'll go to Councilor McKay. Seems like there's three things we're dealing with. I know, Alex, you're dealing with the design and the costing, and Mike, you're dealing with the 10-year budget. We're dealing with public understanding and perception, and I'm sure that if we were to build a building and not have any, and there's a lot of traffic, and we haven't done anything, that future councils are gonna say, like, why didn't you guys think about this? And so there are three moving parts, at least, in this process.
Could I, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
Councilor McKay?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like it, and I think it's everything added up together that I'm missing the points of, we're in the middle of our parks thing. This location, there was only 2 locations given to us. We've had conversations about Quiet Park. We've looked at potentially sharing space with physicians, which might not work on this site. Because we were only given 2 doesn't mean there are only 2. So I really want to just throw it out there and say, because it is a huge, because then we have children's center, health, police, community safety office, town hall, library. That's a lot of things in one building potentially. Is this the right space? And maybe it is, maybe it totally is. But that does feed into the pedestrian and the traffic on the street. And I would hate to be irresponsible to not think holistically of where all those things are going to land and how we're going to, because all of those are public facing. You know, I mean, the town hall probably the least public facing, and it's still a public building. And how does that all flow together? And right now, I think I'm just struggling to see the whole picture. Maybe because there isn't enough data on the table for all of those things. We don't have it on some. So I'm struggling to find this, the AT part, the traffic part, you know, where does that all fit together? And I just can't see it at the moment. So I'm struggling with it.
And valid points to make. So I think at this stage, you'd have to pause. And I would say we would need direction from council of, does council, and I appreciate the comments of Councilor McKay, does council want to reopen the location discussion?
A rhetorical question, or?
Well, I don't think it's being posed as a rhetorical question
No, your
from the
question.
table. So for us, it would be, if we are, then there's a process.
Director
Yeah,
Lake?
I just want to reiterate a couple things. So we did look around the entire town at sites. We also had discussions with Acadia about co-locating a library, and those discussions, you know, for better or worse, didn't go that well. And
But I will say, I have brought them up again in the last
since,
week.
okay. And some of what you're saying is very recent, you know, the Quiet Park piece. So I think in fairness to the process we went through, which did take 2 years, we looked comprehensively at around the town at what the options were outside of making a large land purchase. I think for me, some of the discomfort around this is, I think the traffic sort of consideration is very front of mind because you hear from people all the time, whether you want it to be front of mind or not, it's getting put in the front of your mind. I also think some of the discomfort is around the changing of Wolfville being more urban. And so some of the responses that I see to this are what I would call suburban type responses of moving the stuff away from where other stuff is. And I think from my seat, having more things in the same place is positive, and having more activity and more traffic and some of that tension in any place. And, you know, I actually used this as a case study in my class that I teach at Acadia to talk about the tensions around some of these land use determinants and how different things are weighted. And I realize it's imperfect, but I think we went through it was a very serious process, and we spent a lot of resources on that. And I'm very open. I'm with Mike. Like, I'm happy to do another siting exercise at the direction of council, but I would also caution against that a little bit. I'm not sure there is a better site unless there's kind of some magic that can be pulled together on one of these sites. So yeah, I would encourage you to, from my perspective anyway, is to move through the process as we've kind of conceived of it to date, unless something really great is presented to us.
Okay, are you okay for? Did you want to follow up, or I wasn't sure you were completely finished?
No, I'm
Good.
I'm
Counselor,
trying to think of what I want to say.
Counselor Ingham?
I would just want to build up on what Jody is saying. So as we've gone through the parks plan, and you mentioned Quiet Park, so we also have the Wolfville Children's Center that came to us and we own land there. We also have the physicians coming, looking to, you know, possibly have a building. Is that a piece that we could look at? I don't know. Is there anything that came along when we're looking in the parks plan that would have changed a direction? I mean, that's all.
We own a piece of land over there, but it's quite awkward. I would say that putting a building on it is not.
We don't own Quiet Park.
Yeah, we own like a sliver of it that goes up in behind the
Yeah.
children's center. And then there's the children's center that owns a piece of property, and then EKM owns going all along the street. So that's really speculative to work with. That's why we haven't looked there. We also, when I was going through this, we had a full-on plan for Quiet Park that we'd also put time into that as well. So these are kind of the reasons. It's not to say that we can't.
Mud Creek Rotary put time into.
I guess I was just curious as you were, you know, going through the parks plan, nothing really lit up as another site than the two ones that we discussed?
No, and I should say about the Children's Center, I mean, John is engaging with someone that Rob and I connected with him to do more of a business plan on how they could move forward. So I think they sort of jumped at some things, looking at funding sources, and the provincial government was really looking to push some money out for childcare. That looked really positive. That was totally fair. But I think they're kind of pulling back a bit now and saying, okay, we really need to look at the hard numbers of this. How and when that plays out, we don't know.
Sorry, I got a side conversation, okay? I don't know where we are.
I think from a direction for budget, still kind of stuck on is there direction to now say location is open? Because if that's the move, is to consider a new location, whether it's the one mentioned or something else, that changes the budget timing and the process. It just inevitably does, because more time is needed. It took us a number of years to get to the current location. It's not necessarily going to be quick. And I think Devin's mentioned a couple, the ownership and stuff. So
Yes,
are we talking this location, or are we talking about a new process?
Councillor McKay?
Well, when we went for a tour of EKM, there was direction, we had discussions that we were gonna reach out to them and see if they were willing to play ball, which was done, and we haven't had a meeting yet. So if we're saying there is nothing else on the table and this is it, then I need to retract that email and say,
Right.
forget it.
So, but
So
in
fair enough, I just
fairness,
want to
only
say.
Jody and Aaron, I didn't go on that tour, so you're the only ones that even know, and that was not for town hall, that was for, I
Just-
assume, the health.
Just play ball and have a discussion.
So that's
Well, we
not
can't
something,
build two buildings.
yeah, this has not come to council,
No.
it's not something, I don't even know what it is, so it was a side conversation.
But it was direction from council to go and explore options on at least from the direction that Dr. Wellwood came to us and we said we would go visit different things and see what the options were. This fell into the options, so that was
Yeah,
the direction of
I
council.
don't think that said explore options for land to bid. I think it said for us to go and do exploratory around around a collaborative health center. It didn't bring in town hall.
Yeah, and I think the two don't have to be mutually exclusive, because I think as we look at the needs of EKM and our physicians and the children's center, there might be a project down the road down in that area that isn't a town hall. So, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive, but I do think we do need some direction, because if there is a thought that we want to consider the town hall located down in that area or somewhere else, now's the time to do that before we get into an RFP process and go live on Blooms, because it will require us to go back and do a more comprehensive siting process with council.
Yes, and I think there may be something else as well. Just conversations are happening one-on-one with a few of us on different things. I think it's fair to say that the dollar amount and the timing are still reasonable to leave in the budget, this has not been approved, so you're not going out for tender drawings now.
No, simply changing location. I'm gonna suggest from a practical standpoint.
Well, we're not gonna do that today.
Yeah.
We're not changing locations today.
No.
No,
We're
but if
putting in-
council wanted to talk about changing locations, we may want to bump the town hall out a year, for example, because we'd have to go through a process to explore that, and we probably couldn't leave it in the year it's currently sitting.
I don't think we can make that decision today. I mean, two pieces of information have just come up that are separate, and only two of us know what we're talking about, and we're not, and Jody had a conversation, I had a conversation, they were separate conversations, nobody else knows about those, they're not public.
Yeah.
They were not even exploratory, just like, what do you think? So, I don't think today's the time.
Oh, today would only be the time that if council, notwithstanding the input you just had, if council said, no, we're gonna stick with this location, that's different. If it sounds like
Sure.
there's consideration of new info, it does invariably probably lead to an iteration where it slides out to allow time for that. Not that you're gonna pick a new location, but things are moving forward and to move to the next step. So for now, it can stay exactly where it is.
And you're not, if it stays exactly where it is, regardless of what council says today, you are not going out to get drawings on any site.
Well, I think I think it was just mentioned that we're on the Bloom site. What I would also note that we haven't mentioned is, in terms of the library, I think are anxious to fundraise. To fundraise, they need kind of a location and a concept that's been talked about before. And I'd also say, and I can't gauge this, I only bring it up because it's been part of discussions in the past, is I think the library has been anxious to get to a new location. This could delay it, and I think they may have a feeling, and I stand to be corrected, that, oh, this might move it another year or two. Not that that's the end result, but
I do not think we can have this discussion today, but I think that by committee of the whole in December, Jody and Aaron can bring back their discussions so that we're all read into that. I can follow up with a very idle conversation. And then that should not affect our timing. Right now, I know that some of us, this was not my preferred site either, only because I am concerned about traffic, but I'm okay. I'm not gonna stand on that. I think this council made a decision for this site. Now, if another really good site came up, then I think we should be open to that. But You know, I don't think we should be going back to the Elm Street site. It's my personal view. We made a decision as a council.
Debbie? I feel like we put this to bed in terms of those two sites. And to be honest, to think that now after it was a long process, it was not an easy process. We spent a lot of time and effort, and it was a very thoughtful process. So I guess my preference is just to accept that we've made that decision, plan accordingly. If something else comes up, we have a budget amount and a time frame that's been identified. You know, we could make those changes, I suppose, but I don't see how that would really affect necessarily the fundraising effort, because if things change, they could go back and adjust that. So I think we should just carry on. We've identified that we are going to have a new library and a new town hall. That's a given.
Yeah.
And we have a site around which we can get an estimate of both cost and time. So let's work with that. And if something comes up that we discover is better and secure, like I'm having these sidebar conversations that are full of.
Sidebar.
No, not some, but
They were
these maybe
projects that
projects
we were
that,
doing.
but there's nothing definite. There's like, at least with these two locations, I can stand on them. And I know that we as a town own that land. And that is definitely concrete stuff that we have to work with. And so I feel comfortable on that level that we have identified two, and chose one of those two that is ours to do with, you know, whatever we can. So why aren't we just going ahead with that and attaching some dates and figures to that? And if something else comes along that is equally secure in terms of whether or not we can actually have access to that land and build on it, I mean, I don't see why we're now started going back, not knowing what all these other maybes are.
One piece of this, which isn't the future, that year 2 and 3 costs, that may have to be put on hold, as I referenced earlier, the current year budget, and I think Devin alluded to it, is working on a scope and RFP to send out for design concepts for here, because up till this discussion, that's what we understood to be the location. I would guess, does that impact, should we delay that till a location? Would be, I think, a key. We don't want to put an RFP out for a study of this spot if we're thinking it may move.
Sure. Has council approved?
That would come to council.
Yeah, so
But
we
I
haven't
just-
approved it. Yeah.
But the sequence of events is we have gone through a 2-year process, and I would agree with Councillor McKay that there are people that don't know about the process. And so part of moving this forward is socializing that we have done a 2-year process. We did make a decision. This is where it stands today. If we want to put maybe it will be somewhere else in there, we could. But I also think it was a decision. To design an RFP around a maybe site is pretty tough.
Your timing, however, is it significantly impacted if it waited till the middle of December or even early
No,
January?
I think we need to get something out. What we have in the operations plan is getting something out early in the new year.
Sure.
And I think getting this information out publicly on Blooms, the risks of it are very low to, like, it is what it is. And if, like you say, like the deputy mayor said, if something better comes up, we just rationalize that and all good.
I would like that if the CAO and Councillor McKay could come back at the December committee of the whole and update all of us on the tours. I went on 2 of the tours, but not the one here. So that council knows what the options, if there is another option, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. And just to be clear, so yeah, we did 2 tours of Chester and Clare just to look at their collaborative care models coming out of Dr. Wellwood's presentation. And then Councillor McKay and I followed up with a tour of EKM. The mayor wasn't able to join, just to really understand what's currently in the building and to talk about some of their challenges. And that's really where there might be some synergies between where EKM wants to go, with where some of the struggles the physicians are having, and with the children's center. So I think having that on the agenda to have a discussion in December would be really helpful.
All right. But with respect to the dollar amount and the
Stays where it is.
stage, I think everybody is good. And if a few weeks doesn't affect your schedule, it means don't launch blooms right now, but at least we can have so right now we're trying to focus on a budget, not on a specific project or another project that might have some impact. Councilor Palmer?
Well, I just wonder, Director Lake, so your plan is to go for some kind of request for design of some kind, at least preliminary designs, but we don't know what we're gonna do with the intersection. How do we know what the design's gonna look like?
Might be able to weigh in on that. So the money that's allocated for the next fiscal year is not to go out for designs, it's to engage with a consultant to help us with the procurement process
For procurement.
and to establish the groundwork for that.
Okay, so that's not a biggie. Sure. We're okay?
Okay, the next slide. Pickleball.
Well, I was hoping it was gonna be an easy one. Oh, my God.
Well, they come up as they come
What
up.
did we do to you?
Yeah. This is not of my making. I simply translate the wishes of council into.
No, I'm just thinking in terms of the schedule of your slides, like maybe is
Well,
there an
there-
easy one in there?
We may have an easy one
I'm just
later on. but, you know,
afterwards, okay.
As we know, pickleball is a discussion that is kind of ongoing. Is that a fair way to say it?
Could I ask to go in camera, please? Could we take a break? I would like to advise, and staff can stay, but I would like to, if I may, I'm not sure how to do this.
I would make a motion.
All right, thank you. It has to do with land. Is that legal?
Okay. What's
Is
that?
We'll have to,
Yeah,
go
I
in
was just gonna
camera
say
and stop
before,
streaming.
once we go in camera, we'll want to stop the live feed and the
Yes.
recording.
I believe that's what that would be. Was that legal?
Defer to Aaron's mic is
Aaron?
on now.
Around the land, yeah, you can go in for land or legal. I would say probably this one is land related,
is.
if I'm guessing.
All right, it is land. If I request to go in camera for second it. All right,